listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
All right, here we are again, episode 6 of the Straight to Video podcast with me, Rob Lane. What's new out there? All good in your world and everybody doing all right? I really hope you are. Wherever you are in the world right now, thanks for listening. And today I'm chatting to my old friend Jamie Delerict. Jamie and I were both in the band Teenage Casket Company, and Jamie was the bandana wearing, cocky as hell one in the band. You couldn't miss him, and I love this fella. This guy makes a big impression, whether good or bad, but for the most part good. No, actually very good. I don't think I've met anyone with such great punk music and wrestling knowledge and a real fire in his gut for whatever he puts his mind to. Jamie's been in the live music game since way back in 1991, it's cemented in his lyrics to the song Burn This City Down from his band JD and The FDCs debut album Recognize, which they released back in 2012. Can't believe that's almost 10 years ago. The song goes, received my hardcore rulebook in 1991, and I flicked through the pages, but I only picked the parts that mattered. My first step on the ladder. I brought a shit guitar and I started up a band, and we practiced real hard and showed plenty of signs of improvement. Yeah, we were part of a movement. It reads like an actual story, and Burn This City Down, along with Jamie's song Mirrors and Wires, which we played in TCC, they're up there in my all-time favourite songs by anyone. Absolute classics, no matter how commercially successful they may have been. Since his band JD and the FDCs disbanded a few years ago, Jamie is sidestep performing to concentrate more on working behind the scenes on tours and also focusing on some super positive counselling work, but yeah, still that same outspoken character he's always been, but now a lot more grounded and perhaps not such a loose cannon. I still dig him though, and it's always fun to catch up, and this was a great conversation about his early days in the punk scene, moving away from his hometown, and now what it's like to be a dad, like proper real life stuff. If you want to find more about Jamie, you can visit jdandthefdcs.com, where all their music is still available and it's some killer stuff. For now though, grab a coffee and dive into my talk with the one and only, and I mean that, Jamie Delerict.
So vivid. We had this council house in Durham, and new neighbours moved in, and they had a VCR, and I'd never seen one before. I must have been 7, maybe. This must be early 80s, and they invited us in, me and my brother. So I was 7 and he was 5, and it's like, oh, look at this. I'm like, whoa. And I don't know how, but they put on that Bigfoot video, the Bigfoot footage, right. You know, where he's just like, he's going through the woods like that. And he rewound it and play it again. I'm like, whoa, never seen that before. Like, you've never been able to rewind Rainbow if something good happened. Like, they had never seen anything like it. And he said, come round tonight, got a treat, got E.T. Like, how? E.T. is like at the cinema right now. I think it was around 82, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just how that's impossible. And he invited us around, and sure enough, that was my first bootleg video.
E.T. was the original infamous bootleg tape, I think.
Was it?
I think it's the one I relate to as well. It's the one where...
Really?
Yeah. As in like...
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know.
Copies, yeah.
And it was so cool, like seeing... I mean, it's awful now. Like, I despise bootlegs and bootlegging and everything. But like, as a kid, obviously, you can't put that together. And then even when we got our first video player, it was one of those ones with all the buttons sticking out, the push down.
Yeah.
And it, the what were the
top loader.
Top loaders, yeah. And again, these things stick in my head. And it's like, right, we're going to give it a whirl tonight. And like, me and my brother got ready for bed. We had a bath or whatever, came down our pajamas, and Knight Rider was on. We were going to tape Knight Rider so we would watch it again the day after. And we put those huge buttons down, playing record, and the theme tune came on, and me and my brother were like, just assumed that if we were recording, we had to be quiet, otherwise our voices would be picked up on Knight Rider. My parents were like pissing themselves, like, no, it's all right. You can talk.
I love it, man.
Yeah. And then I remember from that Night Rider, I was just so like intrigued by the whole thing that when I watched Night Rider back, I put my ghetto blaster with this little microphone next.
I did that with Airwolf, the theme tune of Airwolf.
Yeah, but I put it next to the video player.
Oh, right, okay.
Not the speaker of the TV.
Yeah.
I held it next to the top load of VHS and I remember like playing the tape, playing the music, which was terrible quality, obviously, and then realizing this is how I can get music off my skateboard videos, like music that would have been really hard and underground to get hold of. Yeah. Oh,
that's genius.
What a game changer, yeah.
So since I've known you, you've been one of the most confident people I've met, by far.
Competent or confident?
Confident, with an F. Has that always been the case? And if so, where does that come from?
Oh, confidence. Funny you mention that, actually, because today I'm studying therapeutic counselling at the minute, which isn't very rock and roll, but perhaps I could turn it into something rock and roll. And I did a presentation today via Zoom, and the rest of my class have been really nervous about it. And I just kind of did a little bit of preparation, and I'm just like, I got this. I can talk on the fly. I don't know where that came from. Like when me and you were in a band together, I never made any notes or anything, or this is what I'm going to come on and say when we hit the stage. This is what I'm going to mention in between songs. And I've done that with all my bands. It always turns out all right. And I do a lot of speaking as well, like public speaking and speaking in groups and for long periods of time on the fly. So I think rock and roll kind of prepared me for that. But I'm not sure it was always that way, because I think I was quite a sensitive kid growing up, and this may surprise you, but a little bit shy.
Right.
You don't believe me, do you?
What I was going to say was I was going to kick things off really by saying, how does the 2020 Jamie Delerict compare to, let's say, the 8-year-old or 11-year-old Jamie Delerict?
Ooh.
Much shyer, or
not far off really, but it's the Jamie Delerict in the middle that was the which is the interesting part of my story, really. I've been through a couple of metamorphoses in my life. So I think, as being a shy, sensitive, overthinking young lad, when I discovered alcohol, that was like, that gave me superhero powers. That gave me the ability to be who I always wanted to be, which is the confident guy who could talk to girls and say whatever he wanted and be the joker. But of course, being who I am and what goes on in my head, I always take things too far because I don't have an off switch. So that's where the alcoholism came in and everything. So I was probably very confident in the band days, especially where you knew me, because I was drinking. And when I stopped, it took me quite a while to find myself, because I kind of like, I went back to how I was when I was a young, sensitive, scared kid again, and I had to rebuild from the ground up, basically, which is who I am now, 2020 me. It took a while, but I'm very, very comfortable and happy in my own skin now.
I probably saw that, but perhaps didn't realise it. You retiring back into your old self. I remember you being super quiet and all that kind of thing. I didn't know if it was just your way of dealing with the situation you was going through at the time. But yeah, I remember you being super quiet and perhaps going in on yourself.
When I first got sober?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I was petrified, mate. Some of those gigs, you were on stage with me, some of the first gigs I did sober. I remember one, Bar Monster in Camden. I recall that as being my first sober gig. I don't know who we played with or anything, but I remember having a couple of pints of water on stage. And I've just been saying, like, I was super confident in between songs and always chatting. Not that night. I turned my back to the audience straight away. I was shaking, visibly shaking, because I was probably still going through alcohol withdrawal at the time. I played gigs way too soon than when I stopped drinking alcohol. And I was hating it, and I couldn't wait for it to be over. And I thought it was going to be like that going forward. I really didn't think I could be creative or play gigs anymore, in all honesty. But I did. But it took a while. So if you remember me being quiet for quite a while, definitely was.
I've never thought of it like that until you actually said it.
I was basically starting from scratch again. There's something I learned when I was being counselled and when I went to rehab, and I was told that whenever an alcoholic, whenever they start drinking quite heavily, which for me was probably 17, 18, it really got heavy. That is when you stop growing emotionally. It's arrested development.
Yeah.
So when I was like in rehab at 32, I think I was a teenage boy. I'd dealt with all of my relationships and all of my friendships the way a teenager would. Usually, especially with relationships, whenever something went wrong, there was an argument or something tiny happened. I was like, right, that's it. I'm going home. See you later. I'm done. You know, there was a lot of self-will and, what's the word I'm looking for? Quite a bit of arrogance, really, as well. Like, yeah, I didn't know. I was a child. All through my 20s and early 30s, I was a little boy.
That's mad. It's amazing that you can pick up on that now, though, and really analyze
Makes sense,
it and flip
right?
it. Yeah, that's great.
I always put it down to like a Peter Pan syndrome. Like, Jamie doesn't want to grow up. He's still dressing the same way as he did when he was 14. Yeah. I still kind of do now. It's always been band shirts or skateboard type stuff, always for me. And I really don't see that changing now. I'm 45.
Not now. Too late now. Shit.
It's too late. There's no turning back.
Before music came into the picture, what were some of your early passions? I know things such as skateboarding and wrestling all play a big part of your character today.
Yes, yeah.
Were they before music?
Well, it's funny you mentioned at the top of this, like you assumed I got into like punk music quite early on, and I didn't really. My earliest musical memory is when I was 5. I saved up my pocket money and I bought Adam and the Ants' Kings of the Wild Frontier. I remember watching Top of the Pops, and I used to cheer on Adam and the Ants, much like I did Newcastle United climbing the league. Like I'd watch the countdown, I'm like, come on, Adam, number 1, come on, yes, stand and delivers number 1. Yeah, that's how I viewed it. And I was obsessive. I was absolutely obsessive about albums. I'd play them back to front. I'd get a 7-inch, and the B-side would get as much love as the A-side. I remember Aha, Take On Me. I bought that 7-inch. And Love Is Reason on the B-side. I played that just as much. But Adam and the Ants was my first love. And yeah, music was all... My parents didn't play any instruments or anything, but there was always lots of LPs and there was lots of Dire Straits, Jethro Tull, Queen. But I never liked anything they liked. I think that kind of punk rock thing was there early on, that I wanted to find my own thing and blaze my own trail. Yeah, and I did that. So whether it be, I was actually into hip hop like super early when I was 11. I'd listen to like underground London hip hop. Don't even know how I found it or got into it, but I did. Derek B, I absolutely loved him. Public Enemy, Run DMC, but I loved Bon Jovi. I loved Europe, the Final Countdown album, and Go West, Aha, and it was all the same to me. I didn't think I was cool because I was listening to Derek B and Public Enemy. I would put on Europe or Go West right after that, and it was all music to me. So I didn't really, I was into The Damned, but I didn't even know that was punk. It's like when you're younger, you don't put labels on stuff. No. It's just music. It was good music and there was bad music. And I'd tape songs off the charts, so that like on my C90 cassettes, the front and the end would often be missing if I couldn't afford the 7-inch single. Had a little ghetto blaster, had a little sharp blue ghetto blaster. I wish I still had it now. And a turntable that I got from a nan that probably sounded horrendous, but it played my 7-inch singles. So punk didn't really come along until just before I left school. I started, my last couple of years of school, I started getting into Jesus Jones and EMF and punk music that I'd found on skateboard videos.
Right.
And I lost friends. And I went from being quite a cool kid, smoking cigarettes at the back of the gym, to being kind of ostracized as the skateboard misfit type kid.
Right.
So I couldn't wait to leave school. And as soon as I left school, I just met some people and we started a punk band. All of us, it was our first band.
Just mates? Did you all like point everybody, oh, you can play drums, you can sing, you can play bass, you can play guitar?
It was fate. It was just total fate. I started college as soon as I left school and just got talking to these guys, and there was a lot of people into music. And about 6 months previous to that, I bought a bass guitar secondhand because I wanted to learn the bass run to Unbelievable by EMF. I'd never played a guitar, never played an instrument or anything, but just got a bass guitar for like 90 quid or something it was with some birthday money. I remember bringing it home. My mum's like, what are you doing? You've never expressed an interest in that at all. You've blown nearly 100 quid on a bass guitar. What are you going to do? And I didn't know. I had no answer. I just tried to work out the bass line Unbeliever, which I still haven't to this day, 30 years on. But yeah, 5-6 months later, I started college, and there was this guy just like, oh yeah, I'm going to start a band, and it's going to be hardcore punk. Do you know anything about that? I'm like, not really. Give me some tapes. I'm like, I've got a bass guitar, play bass. Cool. I know a guitarist. Cool. Oh, my mate plays drums. Cool. And then we were off. And I think like 3 months later, we played our first gig. It was December the 18th, 1991 at the Funky Slug Club in Durham.
What was the band name?
The band was called Submission, and it was awful. We were terrible. Everything that went wrong could. I decided, my first ever band, and I decided, you know what? I've realized that bassists never get much love, and you can't really hear them in the mix. I'm going to change that. And I got a distortion pedal. So I was just like really like what I came to understand as like a Mudhoney type distorted bass sound. Like I was just going to take center stage. That was my idea. So we were horrendous, but none of us knew what we were doing. And I remember I wrote my first song. It was just two chords, A and B, A and B.
Nice.
Guitars drop out for the chorus, and then A and B, A and B. And it was beautiful because we had no preconceived ideas or anything. It's like our first demo really holds up well. I'm quite proud of it. And then the second one, we started getting really big gigs right off the bat. And I thought, this is easy. We started playing like Bradford and Leeds and around the Northeast with bands who are now legends, like Sick of It All,
yeah,
Agnostic Front, Far Side, Born Against, these legendary like hardcore bands. But I just thought this is easy. You get gigs and you play around, and writing songs was just easy. It was bizarre when I look back, because it was never, bands that I've been in have never been like that since, because you overthink everything and you put so much thought into everything. Oh, that sounds a bit like this, or I don't think the drummer will like this, or then it just didn't matter. It was beautiful, beautiful time.
Just totally pure.
Totally pure, yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Was there many kind of local bands of your ilk and age at that time, or was you almost a novelty?
Well, I got lucky in where I live, because although there's no real music scene in Durham, I could be wrong, but there never really has been. I think the most famous band to come out of Durham is Prefab Sprout, who had hits like over 30 years ago. It's just not a hive of activity musically at all. And you could say that about the Northeast as well in general. But in the very early 90s, because I'm talking about 91 here, Durham City was the hub, the UK hub of straight edge. It was the first, like straight edge bands like Minor Threat and Youth of Today. For anyone who is listening that doesn't know straight edge, don't drink, don't smoke, no casual sex. It was just the main place. I don't know how it happened. So there was a band called Voorhees who actually gave Submission our first gig, and the singer of that band was like the scene leader. So youngsters like me would come in, and he would like, all right, yeah, cool, yeah, you're Jamie. It's like, right, you need to listen to Slapshot, you need to listen to Negative Effects. He was just like Gangrene, like, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool what I've heard, but like, I really like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and EMF and Run DMC. Like, no. You listen to Mind Threat, you listen to Youth of Today, you listen to Inside Out. It's like, now this is, and all of the other kids were just like, okay. And also you don't drink anymore and you don't smoke. I'm like, right, all right. Okay. Well, I smoke occasionally. So, I guess I should stop. Not drinking, steady on there, mate. Like, this music is amazing, but you ain't taking away my beer. So remember, we really got into it one gig in Newcastle. Like, I was drinking at the bar and he'd come up to me. He was older than us all, like mid-20s or something. I was 18 maybe. And I was drinking a pint of McEwen's lager, and he says, oh, so I hear you're vegetarian now. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, yeah. He says, well, did you know that McEwen's lager's tested on animals? And just like having a real go at me, like from a really high horse place. And we butted heads from the start. And I loved the music. I loved the bands. I loved the scene. But I wanted to listen to what I wanted to alongside with that. It was very narrow-minded, and punk rock is very narrow-minded. It really is. It's like it's you listen to that and that's it. And I always thought that sucked. And as a footnote, bringing it forward into modern day, that guy, the same guy who kind of like bullied me and bullied everyone and was the same leader, who is now he's got to be in his 50s and he's got a kid and stuff now. He found me online, Facebook, a few years ago, just commenting on someone else and just laid into me again. He never liked me. And when we crisscrossed, very rarely, when my punk band Panic played similar, same gigs he was at, he was an arsehole then as well. It's really, really odd. I guess it's just two people that didn't get on because I didn't want to follow the leader and just do everything that was told. Like, I never got it, but I've always been anti-authority and no one tells me what to do. You know that.
Definitely. You and Ben, your brother, you're very different personalities. How was your relationship growing up? Have you always got on? You've always seemed very close.
No, we hated each other.
Is that true?
To the point where my mum, I have one younger brother, he's 2 years younger, that's it. But there was a point where my mum, when I was still living at home, was just really, really genuinely worried how much we hated each other. Oh, it was awful. Absolute pure hatred. He would accuse me of things. He'd set me up. He was into American football and he hid his Miami Dolphins scarf in my wardrobe one time, told my mum that I'd been in his room and stole it. So my mum did spot check in my room and found the scarf and I got grounded. It was that kind of relationship. So I hated him. He would punch me in the face and bust my lip and stuff. And the minute I'd go to get him back, he'd start crying and then I'd get in trouble and get grounded. And I know that's just a brotherly relationship for a lot of people, but it ran deep. And funnily enough, we only started getting on when I left home at 18, because I left a lot of my stuff behind and I left a lot of my punk tapes and albums behind. So I remember he wrote me a letter about 2 months after I moved to Nottingham. And he said, I've been listening to your Descendants tapes and Operation Ivy and Screeching Weasel and Ramones and Misfits. And he's just like, I'm wondering where I could get more from. And I remember he visited me in Nottingham at the punk house we lived at, and we shaved his head into a Mohican when he was drunk, and we took him to some gigs and just showed him life, you know. So we kind of got on from then, but as kids, no, hatred.
Wow, I never expected that. That is insane.
Yeah.
So do you think it was just the fact that you was in the same house together at certain ages, just combustible?
I guess so. We had nothing in common. We had nothing in common whatsoever. He was very much a home bird. He didn't really go out much. He'd just stay in his room. And I was very social. I was always out skateboarding, going to gigs, had lots of friends. So I guess when I left home, he just kind of, he blossomed. I think my mum thought he would be one of those guys, like 40-year-old virgin, 40, still living at home or something. But yeah, no, he grew up a lot, I think, when we shaved his head.
Superb. You touched on it earlier. Your first gig was in 1991, and we spoke about that year being a pretty awesome year quite a few times.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to touch on that a bit more? Was it how old would you have been at that point?
16. Yeah, 16. Yeah, 91 was just when it all changed for me. I left school. The first half of the year was very miserable. It was very lonely. Unbelievable by EMF came out and it shook my world. Absolutely did. I got the 7-inch, I got the cassette, I got the CD single before the album came out and everything. And oh man, I taped it on a cassette, all on one side and all on the other side, so I could listen to it on my Walkman. And still 30 years on, like, I don't get sick of that song. It's perfection. But a lot of my memories of that was quite lonely, yeah. And that song really spoke to me. And I bought the bass around that time, and I also went to my first ever gig around that time, which was EMF at Leeds University. And Ian Dench, the guitarist, just looked at me. I swear he looked at me. I know he looked at me. I just kind of looked at me playing his guitar. I was like, yeah! And I looked at Nigel. I'm just like, yes, yeah, that is what I want to do. So I got.
Was it a lightning bolt moment?
Absolute come to Jesus moment. Bright light shone down. That is what I want to do. It was one of those coach trips. Remember, gigs used to do coach trips. That's why it was at Leeds University, because they weren't playing the Northeast, I don't think. And yeah, on the coach on the way back, I was just buzzing. I was absolutely buzzing. I know what I want to do now. And even though I'd never picked up a guitar in my life, I just knew I had to find a bass I think I was told a bass was easier to learn than a guitar. So I'm like, I'll start from there. And then, left school, met some new people, found punk, which was a calling, got in the band. And then I went to my first rock gig. I went to see L7 at Newcastle Riverside. So by the end of 91, I just played my first gig, been to my first gigs, transformed, absolutely transformed. And I found the thing that, well, I'm going to do for basically the rest of my life. Transformative. Yeah.
91 was the year you was kind of getting into it. And I've been going through your Facebook photo albums, and I've seen them before, but there's some frigging gold in there.
Which ones?
Of all your first gigs. But ones I was noticing most was from the Rancid first UK tour in 1993. There's an actual note on there that you went to every date.
Yes.
How did you do that back then?
Right. So 93. Yeah, 93 I moved to Nottingham, I think. Maybe 92, tail end of 92, I don't know. I moved to Nottingham. So my band, Submission, played a gig in Durham, and a Nottingham band called Downfall were on tour, and my parents put them up. And it was the band, there was 4 of them and about 4 of the mates, and they were supporting Born Against on a UK tour. And I just thought it was so cool of my parents to put them up. They just took over the place, and my mum fed and watered them and stuff. And I got on really well, and they were like, oh, well, you should come down to Nottingham and hang out with us. So I ended up doing that every 3 months. I go to Nottingham, and I was just, the bright lights in the big city of Nottingham was nothing compared to Durham. Durham just looked like this tiny little backwoods village. Now it seemed what Nottingham was like, and all the gigs and the music and what the city centre was like. So I moved down there. It was like, just went on the dole, and everyone was in bands, and we lived in punk houses, and we just used to, whosever turn it was getting the gyro, they would just get like loads of cider and fags and stuff. And that was part of where when I started drinking every day. Food was optional, and rarely anything more exciting than rice or beans, but there was always beer. So the Rancid thing, I knew about them from Operation Ivy. I knew, the guys from Operation Ivy started a new band, Rancid. They had a 7-inch on Lookout Records, which was where Green Day started. I think that, the first album had come out on Epitaph as well, and I just loved it. But I didn't have any money, and they were doing a UK tour. So as was just usual, I'd just go and do something. And I'm like, right, okay. So I'll go to the first gig in London. I'll make friends with them. Maybe I'll get on their tour bus, which I don't think they even had a bus. I think they were in a van then. And I'll just figure the rest out. Like, I had no ties. I had no one to answer to. I was away from my parents for the first time in my life. So I didn't have to, I'll be back by 10 p.m. or anything. I could do what I want. And looking back, I wouldn't do it again. And I wouldn't recommend that my daughter ever does that. But I went to London. I did indeed. I just hung around the venue till I saw them, and I recognized them from the back of the record, pre-internet, of course. And it turned out that none of them drunk. So they're like, yeah, come in. And they were drinking tea. They gave me their beer, and we just ended up chatting and stuff. So I'd be down the front. There was no room in the van from what I remember, but I just hitched. From each place, and I slept in bus shelters. There was this was the winter of 93. It was like October, November, December. I remember a really bad night at Leeds bus station. Like, I was too drunk to be scared, but I was so cold. And I thought, this is a bad idea. But I just I hitched to the next place, spent all day hitching to each place, get to the venue, and then they'd feed and water me. And I did that with a lot of bands in the 90s as well. I never had any money, ever. But if I wanted to see a band, I would just get dropped off in a motorway, put my thumb out, get to the venue, make friends with them, get beer off them, and then either stop at someone's house that I knew, or get off with a girl or something and stop at her house. It always worked out. It just always worked out.
Every time it always worked
Every time. And you've been with me when our backs have been against the wall. I'll be like, it's all right. It'll be fine. And things work out, and there's always a cool story attached, right? You've seen it with your own two eyes.
I have seen it. It's magical.
Yeah, it is.
It really is magical. You mentioned it then, that was all before the internet, and certainly before social media. So how did you find out about things, particularly stuff like underground wrestling events? I don't know when you started going to them, but you've got like a real good encyclopedic mind when it comes to wrestling, so you must have been finding out really old stuff. And just the punk scene, was it fanzines, old school mailing lists, or was it particularly magazines? Or
Yeah, it was fanzines. So I just had another Rancid memory pop up there. I remember the first gig of that tour, because they were a three-piece, and Lars Fredriksson, no one knew anything about him. So this guy with a Mohican got on stage and picked up a guitar. I and everyone else thought, oh, this must be the roadie. And then someone said, no, I've heard they've got another guitarist who was in the UK subs. Like, the UK subs, what have they got to do with Rancid? And there was just little whispers. No one knew anything, because we got the news from fanzine. So Maximum Rock and Roll was the most up-to-date one from America, but even that would take its time to get over to the UK. So we were always super slow with the news. There was a lot of tape trading going off and record trading, so that sometimes you get little flyers popped in there that you garner some information from or buy more fanzines. But because you did a fanzine as well, you had a relatively quick turnaround, but a lot of the cut and paste punk fanzines, by the time they go to print 6 months later, it's old news. So, man, we knew nothing. We knew nothing about the gigs at all. It's amazing. And I'm sure if we speak to kids now about how we got gigs, Panic got gigs in the early 90s via letter. We would get a letter from someone, say, I don't know, hey, my name's Barry, and I do the Rock Society for London University or something like that. We haven't got much money, but do you want to do a gig on the 15th of June with Toast and Chopper? We can give you petrol money and maybe a few beers. So I'd get that letter at our PO box. Next time we have a band practice, run it by the guys. Yeah, get it in the diary. I'll write them a letter back, because I didn't even have a phone. Pre-mobile phones, we couldn't afford landlines at the punk houses. I mean, that's by letter. This would blow teenage band members' minds.
Yeah.
And then forget about getting to the venues. You follow signs to London from Nottingham. Okay, no problem. Then you've got to get the A to Z out and do the pages, and before AA and Google Maps and things like that. I don't know how we did it. So you asking about how we got the news, I don't know. But you mentioned, I do have this, my short-term memory is terrible. Don't know what I was doing yesterday, but with music and 80s pop music or wrestling or whatever, it's just there. It's just there. And I absorbed information. So if I read something once, it's in there, especially back then. Now I think my hard drive's a bit full and it can't really take any more information.
Needs a Windows 95 defrag.
It's past defrag and it needs hoying out. But you mentioned wrestling. I started watching that in 91 as well. That's another thing, another landmark moment, and I still love it to this day. I wasn't interested in the independent wrestling scene around then, because it wasn't like it is now. You'd get the rip-off WWF ones. You get like a fake Undertaker and a fake Hulk Hogan and things like that. That period between the Big Daddy Giant Haystacks, Kendo Nagasaki, and now, or the last 10, 15 years where there's some good independent wrestlers, was terrible. It was real carny stuff, just making money out of like fake, out of shape WWF character rip-offs. But I watched WWF religiously.
Man. You're a dad now, and a very good one.
Thank you.
How have you found juggling the obvious kid that's still inside and adult responsibilities? Does it come natural?
No, that's the toughest thing, because especially now, she's 12, so she's basically a teenager right now. She's dyed her hair black. In her own words, she's going through a goth phase already. She's just hiding in a room all day and not coming out in the sun and listening to Billie Eilish and Paramore. Her latest WhatsApp pic is like black hair and a Lamb of God beanie. So me being the voice of reason and authority is terrible. I hear myself saying things. I'm like, oh my God, that's what my dad said to me. And I was rolling my eyes and I didn't want to hear it and I knew best. And it's happening now. So it's karma.
Right.
I deserve everything I'm going to get. When I moved away from home, I said we didn't have a phone or anything. I didn't speak to my mum for at least 6 months. And I speak to her now. We're very, very close. And she was worried sick. So you bring someone up for 18 years, yeah, your firstborn, he moves out. He's like, yeah, see ya, bye.
Gone.
Not bothered, loving life, not having to report to anyone. And yes, she was brokenhearted and worried sick and so many sleepless nights. So if that's going to happen to me, I deserve it. I've got to take it on the chin. And it's karma for what I put my parents through. It really is. And it's beginning now. You haven't seen her for a few months. I don't
No.
think you're going to recognise her next time you see her.
She has, on the flip side of that, though, she has took on a lot of your interests and stuff like that. That must feel pretty good.
That's the best.
A younger person doesn't think, oh, my dad's at all far. I actually think that's cool what he's into. That's got to be a cool thing.
Well, she thinks, no, she no longer thinks I'm cool. She thinks I'm lame now.
Okay.
Like, she's, I was speaking to, he's a name drop, but I was speaking to Mark Morton from Lamb of God. I sent him the picture of Melody in a beanie, and he's like, oh, that's brilliant. He's got a daughter similar age to Melody, and he said, she doesn't give a shit. I'm in Lamb of God, won't wear any of my merch. Like, she thinks I'm really uncool. And that's where I'm at with Melody. You've seen her at like JD The FDCs gigs before. I brought her on stage a couple of times, and she thought I was the coolest thing ever. Now she just thinks I'm really sad and lame, and she'd rather listen to any music than any of my stuff. Like, if I pick up my guitar and start playing something, she's just like, oh God, like, your singing's terrible. Your guitar playing is really bad. It hurts. It really hurts. But yeah, we go skateboarding together. I started teaching her guitar in lockdown. She's already as good as I am, which isn't saying much. She plays the drums a bit as well. And yeah, she's been to a few punk gigs. She loves the Interrupters. She loves Paramore. It's wonderful. And if, as a parent, if you can't turn your child into a little miniature version of yourself, then what's the point, really? Eh?
Amazing, man. That's it. I got loads there, mate.
Wonderful.
I really appreciate you taking the time.
City town. Go burn this city down. Go burn this city down. Go burn this city down. Go burn this city down.
Yep, there he was. Jamie Delerict of JD and the FDCs. If you enjoyed that talk, please head on over to jdandthefdcs.com and pick up your own copy of their albums Recognise and its 2015 follow-up Anatomy of a Wolf. Jamie, much like myself, he's just one big fanboy, so there are a bunch of super cool guests on those albums from the likes of AC Slade, Richard Backus of D-Generation, Des Cadena, and even Amy Dumas, who you might know as Lita from WWE. They're all on there. I'm really enjoying all the comments and response I'm getting from everyone on these podcast episodes. Already a heck of a lot of cool talks in the bag for the coming weeks, but please let me know if there's anyone I should be talking to out there who you think I may be missing. And cheers so much for the continued likes, follows, and those all-important shares. You're making a difference, really are. I'll be back with episode 7 real soon, and once again, thank you so much for listening to the Straight to Video podcast. You guys are the best. See ya.